And that involves obviously interpreting the scriptures from time to time.
That is the role of the governing body.
And am I right in understanding that the governing body's interpretation of the scriptures on any particular point might change or develop from time to time?
That is correct as well.
So I think some examples might be, for example, firstly, the question of blood fractions and whether that is or isn't covered by the prohibition for the receipt of blood transfusions.
That is correct as well, but if I could just mention, when blood transfusions were first introduced, there wasn't a lot of options with regard to blood fractions.
Yes, but my point is, or what I'm seeking to understand, is there was an interpretation at one point which said that members of the Jehovah's Witnesses should not receive blood fractions, but in more recent times it's been accepted, as I understand it, that there's no specific scriptural direction on that, so on blood fractions, that is, so that's a matter for the individual conscience of Jehovah's Witnesses.
That's right, and Mr. Stewart, if I may mention, this is an example of the desire of the governing body not to go beyond the scriptures. Clearly we have the direction in Acts chapter 15, 28 and 29 against blood. But if I could also mention, you see, as with anything in the community, more and more knowledge becomes available medically. It can be very overwhelming trying to see all the latest medical research and so on. But the governing body tries to make sure that they don't go beyond what is written. If we see that a direction from the scriptures has perhaps been used too broadly, then we're the first ones to try to correct that.
Hello, everybody.
Howdy.
Oh, boy. Josh, sweetie, this is beyond a half a pound of M&Ms.
This is time for some rum. A good stiff drink right now.
My goodness, my goodness.
Thank you for sending us your recording of your Bible study.
Yes.
And like I've said before, Jehovah's Witnesses, when your Bible studies are turning to the apostates to learn how to help you see how wrong you are, you can't survive. What we have this evening is a recorded Bible study from Josh, and during this particular study there's a discussion regarding the blood issue. And Josh, you handled yourself very well, especially when the sister makes a dumbass statement. Well, those that took blood transfusions got sick afterwards.
Yeah, get a disease.
Get a disease. I remember back in the late 60s, before my mom and dad started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, we was going on a camping trip for a weekend, and my mom was pregnant with her third child. And unfortunately, she miscarried that child. And in the course of that, she had to have a blood transfusion. I am living witness proof that my mother did not get a disease from that blood transfusion. Now keep in mind, this was back in, like I said, it was about the late 60s, because I remember it very vividly. And back then, screening blood wasn't
The priority.
well, but not only that, it wasn't as fine-tuned as it is today. Today, screening blood is a much, much, much more careful process. But to have a Jehovah's Witness during a study make a blanket statement that, yeah, they got a disease after the blood transfusion just shows how ignorant some Jehovah's Witnesses truly truly are. And even in the first clip, we're going to play the clip again in the end, but even Jeffrey Jackson makes a comment when being questioned about the blood doctrine and about the blood fractions. And if I have it quoted right, Jeffrey Jackson says, well, there was not a lot of options regarding blood fractions. Really? When you wrote this booklet, Jehovah's Witnesses, back in 1961, there must have been a lot written or known about blood fractions for you to also have included blood fractions as against God's law. Get around that argument. Okay?
Can't.
You can't. But see, I want to go back on page 56, same brochure. Yes, true faith is based on a solid foundation. Faith in God and the resultant confidence in the rightness of His law has such a firm foundation. Well, if it was the rightness of God's law to refuse blood transfusions and or blood fractions, then why did the rightness of that law change?
Well, I was going to say, it sounds like the foundation was a little shaky or built on sand if it was changed now.
Exactly right.
Not the same foundation now.
But before we actually get into this recording here, there's a couple of scriptures that I would like to read. 1 John, starting chapter 4, verse 16. Okay? And we know ourselves, and we ourselves have come to know and have believed the love that God has in our case. God is love, and he that remains in love remains in union with God, and God remains in union with him. Here's the qualifier. This is how love has been made perfect with us, that we may have freeness of speech in the day of judgment. Wow, Watchtower. In 1961, blood fractions were against God's law. Many a Jehovah's Witness lost their lives while refusing blood fractions. And now that you say blood fractions are a conscience matter, you've lost your freeness of speech. Now, I find it interesting that when you listen to this whole argument regarding this blood issue with these two Jehovah's Witnesses, neither one of them Jehovah's Witnesses brings up the policy change about blood fractions, right? Now, that may have been discussed later. I don't know, because it kind of abruptly ended, correct?
Yeah.
Was that the end of it?
Yeah.
Okay, but I also want to go on with 1 John, and I want to skip over to chapter 5, 1 John 5, and I want to read verse 3. For this is what the love of God means, that we observe his commandments. And that's what Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to do with this blood issue. They're trying to, this is a command of God. Now, even though it's going to change sometime again in the future, it's still a command of God. But it goes on. And yet his commandments are not burdensome. I want everybody that's a non-Jehovah's Witness and or studying with Jehovah's Witnesses to realize what a burden the Watchtower and Babel Crap Society puts on you regarding this blood issue. You will lose family members. It don't get any more burdensome than that, because you got to plan funerals, you've got to plan wakes, you've got to plan. It's nonsense, because God's commandments are not burdensome, but yet Jehovah's Witnesses hold you to this command, this false command, and it becomes burdensome.
Well, I was going to say, I don't remember which one mentions, that any procedure can be done without blood now. And the first thing I thought of is those two Jehovah Witness moms who had given birth to
Recently.
babies. And it's just been recently, I mean, within a year, maybe even within 6 months. And both of them died because of the blood issue and refusing blood. One baby died with the mom, and thankfully the other one survived. But I mean, both of those moms passed away, and now the hospital is fighting to change the policy that they want to be able to do any medical treatment.
Well, here comes the burden. Now you've got a husband, in one case, not only lost the wife, he lost a child. And in the other case, he lost a wife, and now he's going to be a single daddy. How is that not burdensome, Watchtower? That is burdensome. But I want to show something from Christ's own words, to where if this blood issue was so important, don't you think the Son of God would have mentioned it? Don't you think the Son of God would have held it to the highest esteem, like Watchtower does? And this is where the conflict arises between Christ and the Watchtower. Because the Watchtower holds to an old Mosaic law not to eat blood, and that would include injecting it into your arms. Well, you know what? During all of this, you hear this Jehovah Witness, who's the instructor, the study instructor, starts talking about the different ways, you can take in the blood. Well, you know what? Jehovah's Witnesses, when you take in and listen to the bullshit that you're presenting, your ears are taking in the bullshit, and your brain becomes bullshit. That's what happens when you continuously take all this crap in and you don't stop and think for yourself.
Well, they are just a bunch of parrots.
They're just parroting.
Just parroting what Watchtower tells them.
So I'm gonna ask a question for Jehovah's Witnesses right here, right now. If this blood issue is such a command from God, then why did Jesus ignore it in these words? Matthew chapter 22. Start at verse 34. This was right after the Pharisees asked Christ about the resurrection. If a woman has 7 husbands and they all die in the resurrection, which one will she belong to? And then verse 29, Jesus says, in reply to them, you are mistaken because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, neither do men marry nor women given in marriage. So you kind of know where I'm going with this. Down at verse 34, after the Pharisees heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they came together in one group. And one of them, versed in the law, mind you, asked, testing him, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law? He said to them, you must love, and this is the New World Translation, so I'm going to throw the name Jehovah in there. You must love Jehovah, your God, with your whole heart, and with your whole soul, and with your whole mind. And the greatest is this, avoid blood and blood fractions at all cost. No. That's not what I'm sorry. That's that damn Watchtower Bible again. It just throws this crap up in front of me all the time. Oh Lord, please forgive me. I pray for your Holy Spirit as I read the rest of this law. Okay, let me go back. 37. He said to him, you must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart, with your whole soul, and with your whole mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. The second, like it, is this. You must love your neighbor as yourself. Verse 40, Jehovah's Witnesses, on these 2 commands the whole law hangs and the prophets. Think
Pretty
about
clear.
what I just read. If this blood issue was so damn important to Almighty God Jehovah, then Jesus would have mentioned it right here. And then that thought would have been carried on to that governing body assembly in at Acts chapter 15 that you so lovingly take out of context. They just don't get it, do they?
No.
I hope that every Bible student of Jehovah's Witnesses right now stumbles on this video so you can see the nonsense that these people throw at you. It's just ridiculous how these people are not teaching the Bible. They're teaching false interpretations because they miss this simple, basic little scripture that Christ said. There's only 2 commands. And on those 2 commands, the rest of the law hangs.
Well, what they don't realize that people out of love give blood so that they can get their fractions.
Well, didn't Jesus Christ said that no one has love greater than this, that you should surrender your soul? Well, the life is in the blood. When you give a blood transfusion, you are surrendering your soul. You're surrendering yourself to help your neighbor live.
But yet witnesses won't give blood.
Witnesses won't give blood.
Now, I just want to say there is a little bit of noise in the background that I wasn't able to denoise in my editing program or get rid of. And it's Josh's little son. He's got a car and he's playing, I believe, on the same table where the recording device is. And it's funny because every once in a while you can hear him sigh, and I think he even chimes in. Yeah. And so it's like kids are listening.
Yes, and just a word of encouragement for us that are doing these videos to expose the nonsense or to destroy Watchtower's foundation. Just this week alone, we got a couple more emails from people such as Josh that have stopped their studies because of the work that we're doing on YouTube.
So keep it up, everybody.
Keep it up, because for me personally, it's just as important to help our brothers and sisters escape the cult when they find that conflict in them. And it's just as important to let the world, the non-Jehovah Witness world, know what they're going to expect when they get involved. What they should expect to see when they get involved with Jehovah's Witnesses. And people that are sound of mind, like Josh and those emails we got this week, they're going to quit their studies and leave because it doesn't make sense no more. It's just like the scriptures tell us. And they will know that a false prophet was among them. Yeah,
exactly.
And this is what's happening.
Yes. So we're just going to play the audio in its entirety, and we have the a larger expanded clip of Jeffrey Jackson at the end talking about the blood transfusion and blood fractions. And thank you, Josh, so much, for the privilege of sharing this with the world. Because these are just...
it's invaluable.
Yeah.
It's invaluable because the non-Jehovah Witness can also see, what to expect when these people are trying to teach them the Bible.
And it also shows that it's very difficult to reason with them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there is no reasoning with them.
Yeah, and
You're absolutely right. You cannot reason with these people. You can't do it. That's why, I always say, we're not waking them up. The conflict already exists in the Jehovah's Witness before they even begin to start clicking on apostate YouTube videos.
Yeah, and so, if this prevents someone from studying with them, or someone who is studying, so they can see what they have to deal with, and witnesses should come with fine print, that you with a warning label.
Yeah, yes.
Warning label.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go finish my rum.
And
thank you again, Josh, for providing this for us, letting us have the honor and the privilege of doing this. I hope my rant did it a little bit of justice. But there again, never hurts. But then again, for those that would like to do the same thing and have a source to upload it to YouTube, You know, Kim and I would always be happy to do it. We've got a really good editing program that we can edit out most of the background noises and things like that. But trust me, we're not the only YouTuber out there looking to expose Watchtower. There are many, many, many others, and I'm sure that there are many other, you know, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses with YouTube channels that would love to have the honor of doing this also.
Yes. So just contact us through watchtower.exposed or on Facebook, Kimmy M. Brooks.
Yep.
So thank you all. And actually, I was just going to mention, Mike and I actually spent a lot of hours on Sunday reading a bunch of comments on our videos, and we wanted to thank all of you so much, you know, for the wonderful comments. And we apologize that we aren't able to reply to all of you, you know, but great comments, guys.
Well,
great comments. We've got the best friends.
Yeah, it's over the series that we're doing on 1975, and I think we've got one more that we want to do, because there's some other things that I want to tackle regarding the 6,000 years of man's existence on Earth.
Well, we've had some other stuff come up too. I was digging further in the beast and found a whole disc just on 1975. So it's like, work is never done.
We're going to keep it coming, because it just, I guess for lack of thinking this thought out, for those of us that have left, once in a while there's always a conflict in us. What if they're right? Oh my God, am I making the wrong choice?
Everybody has that.
We all have that. And of course, the longer you're away from Watchtower, the more research you do, the less and less that comes into your soul. When you hear these talks in their entirety, I think most of everybody that's heard them so far will come to the understanding that you've made the right choice in leaving Watchtower.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, that's what these talks are doing. They're showing conclusively that they were pointing to 1975 as being the end of this wicked system of things. Yeah. And so I'm going to leave it at that, so we don't give away anything else of what we got coming for the next part.
So we hope you all have a good evening and enjoy this clip of a Bible study.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's flip this a little bit. Let's have April read 13.
The command to abstain from blood includes blood transfusions. Yes. To illustrate, suppose a doctor were to tell you to abstain from alcoholic beverages. Would that simply mean that you should not drink alcohol, but that you could have it injected into your veins? Of course not. Likewise, abstaining from blood means not taking it into our bodies at all. So the command to abstain from blood means that we would not allow anyone to transfuse blood into our veins.
How did they come to that conclusion? What do you mean? That this, which was written 2,000 years ago, applies to a life-saving procedure today. Mm-hmm. That's a good question, isn't it? And all that that thing about alcohol, I was reading that, and that you're darn right. I would let someone inject alcohol into my brain, into my veins, if it was determined to save my life. Mm-hmm.
If someone's an alcoholic and I lived with alcoholism, I would not want them to put alcohol. I would not want somebody injecting alcohol in their veins, because they'll still get drunk. If they were an alcoholic, the cure for that is abstinence.
Oh, absolutely. And we want to. I agree with that.
So it'd be like eating it. Whether you put it through your mouth or you put it, like when babies cannot eat because of some reason, they put a tube in them and they feed them intravenously, because then they can eat that way and hold it down. So that's, whether it's through the mouth or through intravenous ways, it's still taking in that blood.
Well, right, but if my doctor told me, I'm an alcoholic, my doctor says, don't touch the stuff. But then I come along and, I haven't been drinking, I'm doing great, and then there's this new discovery. Alcohol will cure you from cancer. I'm not going to let the doctor who said, oh, don't abstain from alcohol, I'm not going to let that stop me from getting that treatment.
Let's not confuse this, okay? Let's get this back to basics. The alcohol example was just to let you know that whether you're taking it in your veins or you're drinking it, it's the same thing. That having it in your veins doesn't negate the fact of what the doctor says about not consuming alcohol. And then you decide, well, if I'm taking it in the veins, that's different. Okay? So let's not confuse that. But the point of the matter is, up to this point, how does God feel about blood?
Well, let's also think about what God feels about life. We've spent the last 2 weeks talking about how precious life is. And how taking risks is a bad thing. And then before that, we talked about how disease and accidents that cause sudden death are caused by the devil. And here we have this life-saving procedure. And I'll be the first to admit that, blood transfusions can be overused, absolutely. But there are situations where the only way you're going to keep somebody alive through, severe trauma or sickle cell anemia is through blood transfusion treatment. And I just don't see the link between this. I mean, obviously they're referring to the Mosaic Law when they say abstain from blood.
Actually, no, because the Christian congregation reestablished that as a command, and we're still under that command.
Well, right.
Because the end is not yet, so it was reestablished with the Christian congregation.
To abstain from eating blood.
Correct.
Let's focus here on the subject at hand. All right. First of all,
I can't wrap my head around that.
That's okay. That's why we have a discussion.
If my little one gets in an accident and needs blood, he's going to get it.
No. Well, let's
regardless of the possible side effects.
Okay.
Because all right, he's dead, or he has a chance to live.
Let's look at it a couple ways. First of all, it's already have been established in the medical field, the medical world, that blood is not necessary to use to save a life. Period. All right? You don't have to have... Well, what does blood do for the system? We're getting medical here. What does blood do for the system? What actually is blood for the system?
To carry oxygen.
Yes. It's a volume. Mm-hmm. It's for volume to carry the necessary nutrients and vitamins and minerals to the other organs so that we can live. They come to find out that blood is not necessarily needed to do that. They just need to make sure that the proper volume is in there so that the blood on its own can produce and be able to work. Every major surgery that has been performed has been performed without blood. See, that's the old first century and before archaic way of doing things. You just add blood to it. Modern scientists have changed over the years. They went from thinking that you have to have blood to come to realizing that blood is actually the worst thing that you can do. That they have to come to realize that they've become better doctors because they felt that they had to rely on blood. So they did surgeries and they just pumped blood in and they didn't care if it was coming out. They just kept pumping the blood in you. But now they come to realize that by not using blood, you can actually perform better. You can actually have better recuperative rates. Mm-hmm. People that have, and they have been studied, the people that had blood transfusions for an operation, and the people that have the same operation without the use of blood have recovered much faster, and the hospital will say.
Well, that's a standard procedure. That's a standard operation. I'm talking about people that suffer from trauma.
We're talking about trauma.
In trauma situations.
In every situation.
It's the volume.
Yeah, in every situation it's the volume. Relying on
my dad is a trauma surgeon, and he would disagree with you wholeheartedly.
There's not everybody that does agree with that. But every major surgery, and some of the top doctors in the world have performed surgeries without blood and have made statements to that effect that you do not need it. Right?
Well, I would need to see some. I don't know.
We got a lot of discussions still about blood. Okay?
And number two, the only way to treat sickle cell anemia is through blood transfusion therapy.
It's the only way they know how to treat it.
Well, at this time, yeah. When they come up with a new treatment, great.
And why do you think they use blood for sickle cell anemia?
Because what happens when you have sickle cell anemia, your blood starts clotting, and you need. I don't know the science of it really.
Well, let me tell you, because I do know. I'm EMT and know that stuff. Surprisingly, I know a little bit about it. The reason why they call it sickle cell is because the blood is shaped like a sickle.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the blood is not designed to be shaped like that, and it causes all type of problems in the human body. They can't carry the nutrients. It hurts going through the body and the veins, thus the term sickle cell. There's no cure for it.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they try to introduce new blood cells into the system that can actually carry it.
Mm-hmm.
Normal blood cells.
Right.
That's why they pump blood into your body.
Right.
The problem is not that. It's the fact that the body is not producing the cells. So they need to concentrate on the marrow, which is where the blood's produced, and that's what they try to do with the therapies, so that the blood can properly produce and try to eliminate that sickle cell that carry it and makes the blood that way. In the meantime, they don't know how to do that. They know what they have to do, but they can't figure it out. So they just give them blood transfusions because they know that the blood is what they need to carry the oxygen, even though they add the volume. It's the actual cells, and there's no way to get around it. There's no cure for it. All right? So it's not the fact that they have to use blood, it's just they don't have any other way of figuring out how to keep a person alive. But people still die from sickle cell, even getting blood.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
The average rate of someone living on sickle cell, they don't live to 40 on average.
Right. 30 is what I heard.
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes 30 is really the baseline. People live 40 is just like they're living 80, 90 years old with sickle cell.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but that doesn't negate God's standards. Let's go back to standards. Up to this point, we come to find out that life is in the blood, and that Jehovah didn't give any allowances for anything. So keep that in mind. We got a lot more discussion.
I understand that life is in the blood. I understand that. But obviously there's more to life than just blood. I mean, how...
There are alternatives, treatments, because Jehovah expects us to be reasonable, and there are medical treatments. But the point is, do we respect God's command, or at the risk of our life, that we will compromise our principles to save our life temporarily?
Yeah, we have a lot more things that we're going to discuss, a lot more scriptures that help us come to that conclusion. Now, we're not going to tell you that if something happens to Oliver, he runs out the street and gets hit by a car, and they're going to give him a transfusion. We're not going to tell you not to do that. I'm not going to say, what are you doing, Josh? Don't you study the Bible? You know God. I'm not going to tell you. That's not my decision. But what we're here to do is to reason from the scriptures of how God views things. All the things we come to learn thus far, you think that God can undo anything that happens in this world?
Mm-hmm.
Satan is out to kill us all. He's out to kill you, me, April, your sons, your daughters, your wife, everybody you know. And he's going to do it on all kinds of levels. He transforms himself into an angel of light, making it think that this is the way to do it. When in fact, he's really leading us to the slaughter. So Jehovah is helping us to be able to see the way he sees. And that if something happens to us, and we make a stand for Bible truth, it's no different than taking blood. If Jehovah tells us that we should not do something, and someone is persecuting us to do it anyway, we're going to hold to God's standards, and we may lose our life because of it. We talked about the Nazis and the concentration camp and what they did to people. Those who held their integrity, a lot of times they were beheaded, they were hung. It's no different that if you do not take a substance in your body that God says abstain from, and you lose your life, God is going to still view you as keeping integrity to him. And whatever Satan tries to throw at us, and whatever this world throws at us, he will be able to turn that around, because what is the future of those who die? What's going to happen to them?
Well, they'll be resurrected.
They'll be resurrected. There's nothing that's going to happen in the system that's going to overturn that. Because whether we die today or tomorrow, we're going to die in the system if we last long enough. The difference is whether we hold our integrity to God.
Well, then why do we worry about taking risks?
Well, we got to worry about that. Life is important. But we're talking about things that God is specific on. Just keep that thought in mind. Well, there's more information concerning this. We're just on paragraph 13.
Just these laws. There are plenty of examples in the Bible of God's laws being broken to save a life. David went behind the tabernacle and partook of the sacred bread because he was starving. He did not get punished. Jesus in the New Testament refers to that very same thing happening. And when he's talking to the Pharisees, they're like, why are they picking grains on the Sabbath? And he refers to that and says, God does not want sacrifice, he wants mercy. And when he says mercy, he means to us that are living right now. And that's what I get from that, don't you? He does not want sacrifice, he wants mercy. And to me, that says that saving a life trumps any Pharisaical law.
See, that's not a Pharisaical law. We don't want to confuse the clear standards that Jehovah has with what the nations did around them. See, again, when Jesus came on the scene, even in David's time, and Jesus referred back to it, there were things that they were doing that Jehovah just allowed for one reason or another, and setting standards for one reason or another. If Jesus came on the scene and he was flicking grain on the Sabbath, he is the Sabbath. That stuff didn't refer to him.
Well, we're talking about respect.
And we're talking about respect.
According to the law, that's just respecting God.
But see, Jesus came to change the law.
Exactly.
And he was helping them.
He wants mercy.
But he also wants the proper obedience. Yeah. And so we don't want to use certain instances because it doesn't apply to every situation. They say it's okay because they weren't supposed to eat grain on Sabbath, so it's okay to do this to save a life because it's more important. Yeah, we're talking about working.
But they went above and beyond. Is that really work?
Yeah.
They were nitpicking and going above what Jehovah said, making it a burden on the people instead of what the Spirit was, to give this day to Jehovah, reflect on His laws, remember how precious life is.
See, this was Pharisees that were trying to keep them to that standard. And they were following around like, you're a disciple of keeping grain on the Sabbath.
God's law.
And they were trying to add to God's law. And that's not what God's law was for. Another instance that a bull fell in a hole on the Sabbath. Are you not getting the bull?
Well, exactly.
The bull was people's livelihood. So you have to be balanced, and that's what Jesus came to teach. Mm-hmm. That people were using the law.
That's what I'm saying.
And that people were using the law to try to keep them to standards that Jehovah didn't mean. That's your livelihood. You need to get that out. Or if someone was hurt, you're not going to repair a broken bone on the Sabbath because you got to be reasonable. So in reference to now the same.
Well, right. If someone's dying,
now
you got to be reasonable.
We are. But now we're talking about something totally different. We're talking about how God views life, the life that He gave us and not us. We can't do anything to save ourselves. That's why we rely on Jesus' sacrifice. That's why we try to get ourselves in God's way of life standard, and we follow the standards because we can't do it ourselves, and nor do we have the power. See, Jehovah has the right to set these standards. That's what we have to realize. No matter we really understand them, Jesus' disciples didn't understand what He meant by eat my flesh and drink my blood. We know that He wasn't talking about breaking that law because that's what Jesus said, didn't He? But they didn't understand it. And so, but they didn't leave Him because they realized that everything that He outlined up to that point was true and righteous. And later they come to appreciate what He meant by that.
Well, that just seems to me like if there's a case where a blood transfusion can save somebody, and I know you told me that there's no situation ever that requires a blood transfusion.
Well, I didn't say ever, but there's There is no surgery that cannot be performed now. They perform every major surgery that involves, a lot of times in the past, blood. They were able to do these surgeries better than they've done in the past. Every surgery performed, even on kids.
Every surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We'll get into
We have proof of this.
And it's proof of that.
And from top doctors, we have a video, a documentary from the top doctors around the world, in their words, showing the technological advances, and that Jehovah's Witnesses were willing to be guinea pigs because we refuse to take blood, but we do not refuse treatment. We want alternative. We love life, but we just refuse to break God's law. So if I was allergic to penicillin, is there an alternative to penicillin that I can take that it's not going to compromise my relationship?
I think that is great. Anytime that you can make surgery better and safer, I am all for that.
Now they have come
but
to
at
the standard.
at this
This
time,
is the gold standard.
but what about the before all these technological advances have been made? There are countless people that have been saved by blood transfusions. Their life has not been snuffed out.
Just because something...
because they took blood that saved their life.
But then they got
and I just don't. No, that is untrue. It happens, yes.
It does happen.
It happens.
But they end up dying again.
But you made a blanket statement that when that happens, they get a disease. So if you take blood, you're going to get a disease. I will show you thousands of people that have taken a blood transfusion and are very thankful that their life was not sucked out.
Doctors also say
that
if
just
without
drives me
blood,
nuts.
you're going to die.
And how do you go from eating blood to blood transfusions? And how is it disrespecting blood to save someone's life? I just don't understand that. How is that disrespecting blood, even if God says that?
Well, let's find out.
That blood is the life. How is that disrespecting? You're taking life and giving it to someone else.
There's a lot of discussion about blood and life, and I'm not going to deny, nor should I tell you that.
I just don't see where you jump from 2,000 years ago to...
Well, we're setting up a storyline of how God...
Sorry. I'm sorry.
You know what? There's nothing wrong with passion. All right? That shows that you're interested in the subject and you're interested in life.
I mean, of all the things in this book, this is...
It's wow. Look at that. What we want to come to concentrate on, Josh, is that in the past, blood has been used, and blood has saved lives. There's all kinds of substances that has been dangerous, but yet it has saved lives. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's not the discussion. The discussion is how does God view it. We're going to have illustrations to discuss it. We're going to have Bible admonition so that we can reason on it.
Right. That's where I'm coming from. All I'm saying is, obviously, God wants us to respect blood, and He also wants us to respect life.
We want to get out of this up to this point, is that the life is in the blood. Who owns life? Who owns our life? Who's responsible?
God.
Jehovah God. It's clear already from the scriptures that we read that by taking blood into our bodies, how does God feel about it?
By eating it, He doesn't want us to eat the blood.
Yeah. Taking it into our body. That's how you get it into your body. You eat it. It's taking it. No matter how it comes into you, it's still coming into your body. It's still, whatever way it comes in, it's still the same. Whether you inject it, whether you eat it, it's still the same thing because it's providing nourishment or nutrition or whatever.
I have to get more blood.
So we established
in your body.
So the first century Christians had mentioned that we have to just keep abstaining from this. Now, they didn't know about blood plasmas, and they didn't know about platelets and all that. All they knew is what God's standard was.
They didn't know about blood transfusion.
They didn't know about any of that. But they did know that Jehovah says, do not take it into your body. That's what they know. So now we got the illustration that is no different with alcohol. Whether you eat it or inject it, it's the same thing. You're still taking it to your body. That's what this example is about. We're going to continue on with more information because there's a wealth of information and reason points. Keep your stand about the sanctity of life. That's good. But we're going to also continue to reason on what the scriptures say. All right? Let's read 14 and 15. Go ahead and read that.
What if a Christian is badly injured or is in need of major surgery? Suppose doctors say that he must have a blood transfusion or he will die. Of course, the Christian would not want to die. In an effort to preserve God's precious gift of life, he would accept other kinds of treatment that do not involve the misuse of blood. Hence, he would seek such medical attention, if that is available, and would accept a variety of alternatives to blood. Would a Christian break God's law just to stay alive a little longer in this system of things? Jesus said, "Whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." We do not want to die, but we tried to save our present life by breaking God's law, we would be in danger of losing everlasting life. Okay, so here we have God's law. And there's, like I said before, it's referred to as a God's law, a Pharisaical law.
Pharisees
It wasn't a Pharisaical law about blood. The Pharisees was the exact opposite.
to Moses.
But they were sticking to the more traditional.
Well, I'm sorry, Mosaic law as enforced by the Pharisees. This abstaining from blood is called God's law, and I can show you in the Bible there's many times God's law
but we're just saying
has
that
been
it's
broken
not
to save a life.
We're not saying it's Pharisaical law, but keep reading. Right?
We would be in danger of losing everlasting life. We are wise then to put our trust in the. So if we take a blood transfusion, we're going to lose our everlasting life.
Read the paragraph and we'll discuss it. Okay.
We are wise then to put our trust in the righteousness of God's law, with full confidence that if we die from any cause, our life giver will remember us in the resurrection and restore us to the precious gift of life.
All right. Now let's discuss it a little bit. All right. So first, the question is: if doctors say that a Christian must have a blood transfusion,
Mm-hmm.
all right, and I like how the paragraph, the question is: if doctors say,
Mm-hmm.
how would he act or react and why? Now, of course,
say that again.
if a doctor say that a Christian must have a blood transfusion,
Mm-hmm.
how would he react and why?
How would a Christian react?
Sure.
First of all, you would want to learn or ask why. It's imperative. You find out what the procedure entails, the possible side effects, and are there any alternatives?
Exactly. Because people and doctors that use blood,
Mm-hmm.
it's just another procedure. If it was anything else, because basically God told us that, that blood is not ours, it's someone else's life, so we're actually taking something that doesn't belong to us.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that have taken blood that had adverse reactions to it because it was the wrong type or what have you.
Yeah.
And even the right type, sometimes people inherited things and have complications with that. So like you mentioned, if the doctors say that you will die if you don't have a blood transfusion, you're going to ask them, do I have any alternatives?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to ask for a second opinion.
Yeah,
if he was
absolutely.
to tell you that you would die if you didn't get this penicillin, you would, and maybe the reactions of some penicillins, you would ask the same questions. Is there something else I can take? Is there something, another procedure that can be done? You're going to ask all the same questions because blood is no different than anything else the doctors use. It's a medical tool that they use to try to save lives. Now, the question is, as Christians, are we going to accept the medical procedures that they take just simply because they say? Or are we going to make decisions based on solid scriptural advice? Now, going into what Jesus said in Matthew 16:25, he makes a very powerful statement.
Mm-hmm.
He says, whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. Well, for his sake, let's following God's standards. So if Jehovah tells us to not do something,
He's referring, you know what he's talking about right there? He's talking about the first century Christians who often were stood in front of in front of government leaders who were not Christian and asked to renounce their faith.
That's right. To compromise their principles.
Asked to renounce, no.
To save their life.
Christ is not my Lord and Savior.
it was more than that too.
So if what he's saying there is, do not deny me.
And how do you deny God? That's a good question. How do you deny God? If you were faced with something, a government official tells you to do something, what is it that they may tell you to do to deny God?
Tell you to do? Say or renounce the name of Jesus Christ.
That's one thing.
What else? I mean, I don't know. I mean,
think about it.
As a Christian, from the outside looking in, I consider myself a Christian, and I've never heard of this no blood transfusion thing ever.
Let's not springboard back to that. We're in this, but
I know. But what you're trying to get me to say is, would they tell you not to take a blood transfusion?
No. That wasn't my line of reasoning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I talked about that if someone tried to get you to break God's law. This is just one of God's laws about blood. But it all is the same category. It's not different categories. Like it's okay to break this category, but not that. Someone that maybe tells you to renounce your faith, break God's law, and you mentioned, so deny that Jesus is our Savior. But there's other things that the government may try to get you to do that is against God's law. It may tell you that, well, if you have sex with this woman, break your ties to your family, get in a relationship with this person, then we'll let you free. Or if you pay a homage to this God and not your God, Jehovah.
Oh yeah, bow to me.
If you bow to me, or if you follow the things in this world that's outside of God's arrangements, then we will set you free. See, the same thing was similar to happen to Jesus with Satan. You bow down to an act of worship. You turn these loaves, stones into loaves of bread. If you jump off the battlement, see, all that stuff was God's principles that He was directly attacking. And Jesus said, "Do not put Jehovah to the test. You obey Jehovah God, and to Him alone render sacred service." All those things are different laws that Jehovah and standards that Jehovah has set. And Satan, all kinds of different ways, tried to get us to break the laws, even the smallest ones we think. That is important. Now, if we decide not to break those laws, that government official or that tyrant may shoot us, may kill us, may shoot our child. That's a good example. You're in the Congo, you're a Christian, and then the militants come and know that you're one of the Christians that they see out there. So they tell you, Josh, you better renounce your faith or we're going to kill you right now. You will probably say, because you're a man, strong, go ahead. I'm going to hold fast to my faith. They say, okay, you're a strong man, we see it. And then they grab Oliver and put a gun to his head. Renounce your faith or we're going to blow Oliver away. What would you do? See, that's a tough situation. Are you going to listen to God's law or are you going to allow your son right in front of you to get a shot and kill? See, these are all the things that happens to our faith. This is just another situation when it comes to our faith. Jehovah is not only concerned about our life, but He's concerned about us following the very simple standards, even if we don't understand. One of these standards is saving your soul just so that you can live a little while longer in this world. But you broke God's law doing it. How do you think He's going to feel about that? How do you think is He obligated to now give you life in the future because you broke His law? Now, we're not talking about blood, just any other law. Is He obligated to save you? Because you decided to ignore that law so that you can live just a little longer.
Is God required to save anybody? No.
Yeah. And if you deliberately break His law, whatever it may be. No, we're putting blood to the side. Wait a minute, we're putting blood to the side for now. Blood is to the side. We're talking about all these other laws. Okay? These are required to keep as well as this. Mm-hmm. Even if we don't understand this, he tells us that these laws are required.
Right.
But we decide because of some trauma or because of some persecution that we're going to ignore these laws. We're going to ignore these. We're going to ignore these laws. Because we want to save our life now, because our life is important to us, our family's life is important. We're going to ignore these, and God understands because it's my family or it's this principle. He tells us plainly that these laws we still have to keep. But we decided to save ourselves and ignore these. How do you think he feels about that? How do you think he would feel?
I'm not sure, because when David, when he was starving, went into the tabernacle and ate the forbidden bread, he broke God's law.
Okay.
And Jesus himself said, Matthew 12, one day.
So you think that God would not be, is it be okay if you decided to ignore these laws?
Do I think it would be okay? No, but he's merciful.
We know he's merciful. We know he makes decisions based on certain events. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking clear standards that we know that we shouldn't do. And we decide to do it anyway to save ourselves.
Well, look, he said, have you not read what David did when he and the men with him were hungry, how he entered into the house of God, and they ate the loaves of presentation, something that it was not lawful for him or those with him to eat? Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple violate the Sabbath and continue guiltless? But I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. However, if you had understood what this means, I want mercy, not sacrifice.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again.
Now, in making decisions on the publications, I understand from what you say is that you're guided by the scriptures.
That is correct.
And that involves obviously interpreting the scriptures from time to time.
That is the role of the governing body.
And am I right in understanding that the governing body's interpretation of the scriptures on any particular point might change or develop from time to time?
That is correct as well.
So I think some examples might be, for example, firstly, the question of blood fractions and whether that is or isn't covered by the prohibition for the receipt of blood transfusions.
That is correct as well, but if I could just mention, when blood transfusions were first introduced, there wasn't a lot of options with regard to blood fractions.
Yes, but my point is, or what I'm seeking to understand, is there was an interpretation at one point which said that members of the Jehovah's Witnesses should not receive blood fractions, but in more recent times it's been accepted, as I understand it, that there's no specific scriptural direction on that, so on blood fractions, that is, so that's a matter for the individual conscience of Jehovah's Witnesses.
That's right, and Mr. Stewart, if I may mention, this is an example of the desire of the governing body not to go beyond the scriptures. Clearly we have the direction in Acts chapter 15, 28 and 29 against blood. But if I could also mention, you see, as with anything in the community, more and more knowledge becomes available medically. It can be very overwhelming trying to see all the latest medical research and so on. But the governing body tries to make sure that they don't go beyond what is written. If we see that a direction from the scriptures has perhaps been used too broadly, then we're the first ones to try to correct that.